If you ever want to write a book and get published, well, stick around because that's what we're talking about today. We've got myself and Pascal, who are published authors. Pascal just released his latest book, and we've got his technical editors on his latest book that we'll be talking about, covering the whole process of book writing, some tips and tricks, and all that good stuff. So stick around. That's coming up on OT Exposed Raw. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of OT Exposed Raw, and happy Thanksgiving to those of you that are celebrating the American Thanksgiving. And as such, I'm on PTO. It's a holiday, so we're getting back to our partaking in the beverages on the show, or at least I am. So today, we're going to talk about publishing a book. That's something you've ever wanted to do. Or at least writing the book and get published. So we'll talk about that with Pascal and talking about his latest experiences with his latest book and a couple of his technical editors. So let's bring on Pascal.
Hey, everyone. Good to be back again.
Yeah,
I got to say, I'm still halfway in a food coma. It was another feast yesterday.
I'm in a food coma, a labor coma, because I did all the cooking for my family and I smoked a turkey and did all the stuff. And I may or may not be a little hungover, which is why I've got a little hair of the dog going on today. Speaking of hair of the dog, I got a new dog too. I'll have to show you the pictures, but she's been driving me crazy. But and I used my Dutch oven. Speaking, I figured you might appreciate that. I used my Dutch. I didn't use you. I mean, I used a Dutch oven, not my Dutch oven, but you're my Dutch oven. But I used a Dutch oven for Thanksgiving.
What did you make?
Oh, I didn't actually cook anything in it. I used it to plant something with my herbs, but no comment. Anyway, so we're going to talk about your book today and talk a little bit about the process of writing the book. Talk about both of us kind of talking about some combined experiences and giving some helpful hints for those people that are interested in writing a book and kind of the good stuff and the bad stuff. And to help with that, we got a couple of your tech editors, which I think is kind of cool.
It is. So, bring them on because
let's bring them on. Let's bring on Syed and Ron.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, guys.
You're muted. So if you want to talk, you're gonna get off of mute.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
There we go. Hey. Welcome to the show. So, before we get started, why don't we let you guys introduce yourselves? Since you're directly under me on the show, this is only the second time we've had 4 people on the show.
I like it. It's a better division this way. We're still on top. I don't want to change that. We're still on top, but 4 squares is just better than 3 because, thanks a lot. It's better than 3 because get me back up there. But anyway, there's less black areas, unused space now. So the HDD in me says this is better.
Or maybe the obsessive compulsive. Maybe it might be
one of those lingos.
Yeah, so why don't we start with Ron? Why don't you let everybody know who you are, where you come from, as much as you want to divulge.
Yeah, sure. So Ron Nemeth, been in, I guess, the world of cybersecurity, and I'll date myself. I think when I first got in, it was information assurance, probably for like 15 to 18 years. More recently, getting into the IT, OT side of things, doing some cybersecurity assessments across the DoD and taking a look at mostly building automation, some SCADA, electric, kind of diving into those kind of control systems, a wide variety, some other systems as well. Yeah, and just I don't know, just kind of been in the industry and wore a bunch of different hats, DoD, federal government, private industry. So I guess kind of jack of all trades, king of none. But yeah.
Are you an expert in BACnet? Is that how you say it? BAC, BACnet?
BACnet? Yeah, I mean, it's all a lot of BACnet, in the building automation world.
Yeah.
But,
Nice. Welcome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. Well qualified as Pascal's tech editor. Maybe you should actually wrote the book and let him be your tech editor.
They basically did. I'm taking all the glory, but they wrote the book for me. So anyway, yeah, I just an FYI. I think Peck Publishing this second time around, they did a fantastic job in finding editors, technical editors.
So y'all didn't know each other before?
No.
Oh wow.
They didn't ask me. They found these guys all by themselves, and I don't think they could have found any better ones unless they would have. Well, no, they.
Well, and also, they kind of needed to, considering the fact that you don't have any friends.
No, and the ones that I do have don't speak English, so they're all over in the motherland. They
there you go.
Anyway, they couldn't be editors anyway.
Let's move on to Syed.
Yep.
Yeah, well, thank you first of all, for welcoming me in this show. My name is Syed Bilal, as you can see on the screen, and I started my career with Invensys, which is now Schneider Electric, as an automation Foxborough engineer. Later, I moved to safety system, covering the Triconic system as well. Starting from 2010, I moved actually to industrial control system cybersecurity. And my responsibility was more into doing assessment and ensuring that actually the industrial control systems are secured. Understanding that we cannot implement every application that we borrow from IT. In 2017, I moved to PS, which is now part of Hexagon, and currently I'm working as the director of cybersecurity consulting. My current responsibility includes actually helping the critical infrastructure, securing their industrial control system or operational technology by understanding the threats, vulnerabilities, and sometimes actually doing assessment or audit, and actually helping them to build a framework for them that actually particular sites can follow.
Wow. I mean, so two really qualified tech editors. I would have to say Pac did a good job. So I mean,
I know. You know what's funny too. Now that I've because I didn't know who was going to review it, but now that I know your background and I've looked into it and you're presenting yourself, it really makes sense. The comments that you guys gave, I can see where you came from with those. So it's that's interesting to find out how the background for people like that.
I'd say, sorry to cut you. I'd say, it was a pleasure actually reading the book. Maybe it was like, the time wasn't enough. I just got like 1 week sometimes, or maybe 3 to 4 days to review a chapter. But I'd say, I learned more than I reviewed. So, thanks to Pascal, for writing this book.
Yeah, I would say that too. I mean, setting up some of those labs and the environments that you got there. I mean, heck of a job with the detail.
Absolutely.
and you'll have to probably dive into maybe like your home setup there. I'd be interested to know about that too.
If you can see the board, I think it's on the left-hand side. No,
okay,
that side. That board. It's my diagram. So I got a couple of lab setups that I put together. But yeah, like the last chapter mentioned, it's just you get 2 decent workstations, and there's a lot of this stuff that you can do. I actually had a friend over in West Virginia who took the book very literal, and he ordered the 2 servers and he ordered the switches, and he's going through the whole thing, building it up and working it out. So it's amazing, and it's fun.
looks like we have somebody who knows Syed. So that's kind of cool. We got local representation. So thanks for joining us, Fadi. Quick question before we get into kind of some of the talking points. Did you guys communicate strictly through email, or did you actually talk on the phone at all, or like this virtual or anything?
Nope.
So is this the
I'll
first
let
time
them
you've
answer.
actually? Yeah.
Even we did not communicate over email. When I got request from PACT, they said, I cannot communicate to the author directly. So they used to send the chapter to me, and I used to directly, fill the form or comment. I was not supposed to change any content. I can just, provide some feedback. Based on that, again, Pascal is the author. It's up to him whether we would like to incorporate them or not. But again, I never communicated with Pascal directly. It was always through PACT.
I guess we broke the rules, Pascal. I think we talked today at LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, with Syed too. The first thing I did when I saw the first review come back, I went to LinkedIn and looked you guys up just to say hi and thank you. But we didn't communicate about the book. We didn't say, because
Exactly.
I wanted an impartial review on this, right? That's how you get the best results out of it. But yeah,
I mean, I think it would have been good, maybe a little bit, to go back and forth just to get where your headspace was at, and there's probably some things that when you're reviewing it, you're like, I understand what he's saying, but probably more just good discussion points. More than anything else.
What would have helped tremendously is if we had a chance to just start the big giant outline for it, because there were chapters that I just had to put in because it was a second review, and I had to get the material in there to base the rest off. Or you guys wanted to go in deeper, you wanted to see more detail, but that wasn't the plan. The plan was to do monitoring and not cybersecurity architecture. So that's where a disconnect came in. But it didn't help that PEC Publishing, or maybe it was me, I don't know. You guys got to review like chapter 6 and 7, and I hadn't written 1, 2, and 3, 4, which were the basis of all of it. So
yeah.
So this is the first time. So this is the first time you guys have all communicated in anything outside of text-based chat. Certainly the first time you've seen each other's faces, and at least live.
And hearing their voices.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just for our viewers real quick, so the book we're talking about is Industrial Cybersecurity 2nd Edition by Pascal, published by PACT Publishing, I guess is their official title. But this is the 2nd edition, and I have some interesting comments about the 1st edition versus the 2nd edition. But you can actually...
Let me say first that I did not agree at all with the 2nd edition. I fought really hard to get it to be named the 2nd volume, because that's what it really is.
I agree. That's what I was going to say. But so there's the link to it on PACT. And you can also get it on Amazon by searching the title or searching for Pascal, his name. Although there's... Unlike me being the only one of my name in the world, Pascal Ackerman is not the only name of
There's some cycler in there, and I tell you what, I look really terrible in tight bicycle pants. So there's no confusion between him and myself. But if you look me up on Amazon, I'm the first one to pop up, along with some character from Tangled, I think.
So,
did you display the discount code as well?
Not yet. So stick around to the end of the show, and at the end of the show, we will post a discount code. Yeah, I've been learning from other YouTubers. I've been learning these tricks, but yeah, if you
it's worth staying too, because you get 20% off now if you use that discount code. So
yeah, I didn't get the discount code until after I bought the book, but it's fine. That's right. I can't even take it out of your pay because you don't work for me anymore. But so yeah. So one thing that I want to know, and one of the things that I want to get to for the viewers is kind of the process and what we went through, both of us, for our individual experiences, and then what you went through with these guys, and some tips and tricks on others that might want to get published. But one of the things before we get there, I want to comment on your point that it's a 2nd volume, not a 2nd edition. And that's one thing that I really appreciated about the book, is because the first book was really, I like to say it was the 2nd edition of my book, because you had a lot of the same content and outline that I had in my book, which is right there, The Hacking Exposed Industrial Control Systems. But you actually updated it with more recent content because it came out afterwards. But it was really kind of a broad overview. And in the second volume, you chose to dive deeper into some of the technical aspects, specifically around monitoring and also in incident response, which I really appreciated because there's a lack of incident response content and instruction out there. And then you had hands-on instruction for the labs. So it went much more in depth than a few subjects. And I really appreciated that. And I thought that that was really fantastic. So, talk to me a little bit about your thought process and what you wanted to do with the second book. And I'd also like to hear from you guys, the tech editors, on, if you had a chance to review both books, what your thoughts were on the process of moving from the content of the first edition to the second.
And a little bit along the lines of a comment I just saw popping up in the chat is that, yeah, the second edition is mostly new material, but that doesn't mean that you have to read the first one to understand the second one. That's why the first 2 or 3 chapters are in there, just to get the background on it. If you want to know, if you completely first timer coming into the ICS cybersecurity space, then I'd start with the first edition, right? Because it explains the fundamentals, it explains architecture, policies, and procedures. Which, thank God, I was able to left out in the second edition, because that always hurts my brain to talk about that or even write about it.
Everybody loves compliance and policies and procedures.
But as the subtitles of the second edition says, this is about monitoring. So I wanted to give the fundamentals on how to set up an architecture that allows you to do monitoring, right? Because just slapping on some IDS or ICS specific intrusion prevention system doesn't do well. Your architecture has to be built for you to be able to pull the right information. So I wanted to start with that. That's why I still had some information, still some content from the first edition. But after that, we're going to go full into monitoring. We're going to look at ICS specific intrusion prevention or intrusion detection system. We're even looking into some commercial solutions for that, the Forescout to be precise. We're going into doing incident response, threat hunting, anything related to verifying and optimizing and monitoring your security posture for your ICS environment. That was the goal, and I don't know. You guys tell me, did we hit that goal?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I would say, absolutely, yes. I would like to echo, what Pascal just said. If you are into industrial control system, or if you're into securing the operational technology, definitely, you need to start with the first book. Or if you're smart enough, definitely the first 4 chapters of the second book would cover that as well. And then I really liked. I started enjoying from the 5th or 6th chapter, because it dive deep and actually covered in detail how to tackle vulnerability or threats or incidents at the end. Considering industrial control system. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that, from my perspective, when I was writing my book, and I had a team of authors, right? I say my book, but it's only because I'm the only one here. But I put together a team of authors only because I wanted to cover a broad set of topics, and I wanted people with better expertise than me to cover some of those topics. And so my experience was a little different, but I also had a tech editor who I knew personally, and so we communicated a lot. And Hacking Exposed is published through McGraw-Hill, and we didn't really have any strict rules about how we could communicate or couldn't communicate with each other. But the process, I imagine, was very similar in how you would, write a chapter, you submit it, they give it to the tech editors. Let's kind of talk a little bit about, if for those people that want to publish a book or even be a tech editor, because personally, I think that if you're not ready to tackle publishing a book, but you still want to, and I guess before I go into that subject, Ron or Syed, do either of you have a title under your name yet other than editing? Have you written a book yet?
No, not yet.
Not me.
Okay. And so, in the,
really quick, did you approach PACT, or did PACT approach you for the technical editing?
that's a good point.
They approached me, I think, via LinkedIn, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So
For me the same actually.
They actually
So that's
approached me
interesting.
through LinkedIn for my first edition as well. I remember I was in Mexico on one of my first offshore, out of the country engagements for Rockwell, and I was sitting at the pool actually, and then it pinged up. So and that's just because I was blabbing a lot about ICS, and they're like, "Hey, we're seeing you're blabbing a lot about ICS. Would you like to write a book on it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I could try that."
You know, that's a good point in that, in the way, so PAX publishing is pretty aggressive with looking for authors on different subjects as well as technical editors. And we can talk about that a little bit here in a bit.
Yep.
About the different publishers and the kind of like the experience and how you approach each of them, especially for first time authors. But I think that's a really good tip in that if you're not quite ready to go through the process of writing a book on your own, you can, there's two approaches. Number one is to be a technical editor for a book like what you guys did, to start to understand the process, to kind of see the process and to decide if you want to go through as the primary author or not. But it's a way to get your name on a book as well, which, I mean, there's two reasons you would publish a book. Number one is you want to get information out there. You have something to give to the community and you want to get it out there and get published. But it also, number two, it does really good for your career. Even as a technical editor, having your name on the book as a technical editor, it's an accolade you can put on your resume for your career. And because I'm going to tell you right now, and we can all attest to this, and most authors can attest to this, is that you're not going to get rich writing a book. I mean, you don't do this for the money. You do it to share your knowledge as an expert, and you also do it for your own career and get your name out there, and it helps you. And it's a win-win for everybody. Yeah. But you don't do it for the money because you don't make a lot of money off these books. And even if you were to self-publish where you get most of the profits, well, then you don't have the power of the publishing engine. And that's where getting published helps you. Number one, you can self-publish, but what the publishers give you is, as we see here, they'll help you find technical editors. They have the copy edit process. They have the visuals. They have the marketing engines. They also have the sales engines to get your book out there in Barnes and Nobles and college bookstores. I remember I almost had a tear in my eye the first time I saw my book on the shelf at Barnes and Noble. And then I saw it in college bookstores and things like that. It was amazing. And so, but I think that you want to, whenever you are looking to publish, that's an option is to go be a technical editor first. Also find a team of people like I did. So I didn't have confidence in the fact that I can write an entire book on my own within the time frames. So I got a team of people, and that's another process. That's another thing, right? Is that whenever you sign on with the publisher, you have timelines and deadlines, and it's another job. It really is. Writing a book is another full-time job where you have a project manager, somebody breathing down your throat, and you're getting paid for it. So that's another process. So talk to me a little bit about what you guys experienced with the whole kind of the pressure and the deadlines.
But really quick before we move that way, I wanted to point out that you don't have to sit and wait for PACT or any publisher to approach you to be a technical reviewer, right? Go out and say, hey, I'm interested in doing it. They're always looking for technical reviewers.
Yeah, let's jump to that subject kind of a little bit later about how to get started. Let's talk about the process first and what we and kind of talk about. Let's let our viewers hear about kind of what we went through, and then kind of towards the end, let's talk about ways that you can go out and approach publishers or get your manuscript noticed.
So I'm gonna say I've written 3 books now, and all 3 books, the deadline was brutal. You get these folks breathing in your neck, saying, "Hey, you're almost due, you're overdue," and until the point I said that this is enough, back off. I'm going to do this whenever I have time, and then they really back off, and you need to do that because they're on the deadline as well, right? They need to produce, they need to get ready. That book needs to not be stagnant in their system because then they get questions from everybody. But if you just try to do it on your own pace and try to do it for reasonable what fits into your agenda and your time frame, then you finally get some breathing room and it becomes a lot easier. Otherwise it's stagnant, it's really suffocating. And if you have a full-time job on top of it, it's almost impossible to stay up with that.
And
what about from the editor perspective? Yeah,
I was just gonna say it was similar. Like they weren't. I don't think they were breathing down us as bad, but they were trying to get each one reviewed in like a week, and it's tough when you're out doing an assessment or trying to juggle multiple things to sometimes sneak that in there, right? And you want to devote you don't want to do two things at once when you're looking at it. You want to try to devote as much time as you can solely to that content. But I did have one question. So Pascal, as you were, one thing I really liked about the books and when you're talking about incident response is how you link all the things together, right? So how you have your steps and your thought process, right? You find an IP and then, so did you have to like outline each of those, or is that stuff you had done before, kind of using real world examples, or how did you start to construct some of those chapters and those threat hunting exercises and things like that?
So when I signed up for the second edition or second volume as I wanted to be, I had one thing in mind, and that was threat hunting. That was the most important thing for me to get into the book, and basically everything else came around that. So I in order to explain threat hunting, I needed to explain the architecture. I needed to be able to have choking points for monitoring, and then you put those monitoring systems on there. I wanted to explain what those monitoring systems were, how they work, and how they operate. And I might as well set one up, right? Like we did with Security Onion, like we did with the Force Scout stuff, and you just keep building onto that. So. And then as I'm writing the threat hunting, I'm like, okay, so at this point, we're passing it off on the incident response team. Oh, maybe we should write something about incident response. So if you
it was a good flow. Yeah, you can tell it was very natural and it was a good flow. I mean, I think the addition of those was necessary. So you did a good job of just following that thought process and putting it on paper.
Yeah, and I hope I gave enough lab materials and stuff to build this up and to follow along, because until you do something like this, until you've been there and have done the command lines, and it doesn't start to make sense until you've actually done it. And the one I'm most proud of is the one where we use auto runs to go basically throughout the whole Active Directory domain. We jump into every single station, we pull up the auto runs, we look at the hash files, and then we look up those hash files on VirusTotal. And if there's anything malicious starting with any system, that's how you find it. And that's very, very effective method to use out in real life as well.
That was good.
So in the process, and just let me back up on the schedule and the deadlines. It sounds like with PACT, they had some strict deadlines, and you were able to push back a little bit to get them to back off, and that's good that they were able to relax a little bit. From my experience, McGraw-Hill was definitely strict on their timelines, but they were willing to work with me. I mean, I busted my release date on the first one. The book got delayed. And I will say that while they are very strict on timelines, and I would imagine this is probably the same with all publishers, they're strict on the timelines, but once you're contracted and you've started writing, they want to get it done, but they're going to work with you, right? I mean, like I had a life event happen and things like that. So I think that they're very understanding the fact that this is not your sole job. So if you want to publish a book for a major publisher, yeah, there's going to be pressure and there's going to be stress getting the timelines done, but they're also willing to work with you and just communicate with your publishers, with your editor. My editor, she was fantastic, and she worked with me a lot. In fact, I was slated to write a second book of a different title, different series, and that book got put on hiatus just due to everything going on with COVID and life and things like that. And they're real nice about it. And they're like, yeah, just put on a hold for now and we'll revisit it later. And they shut it down. And if we do it, we'll do it. which we'll bring up later on. Remind me when we start talking about ways to get your book published or the best ways to approach. It was a lesson learned for me, and so I'll talk about the manuscript process. Remind me to talk about the manuscript process later. And looks like we lost Syed. Hopefully,
I heard a thump, and then he was gone.
Yeah, we'll see.
Folks, we're live, so
okay, there he's back. He's back. There we go. Let's put you in the right order.
Welcome back. Just a quick note on that. So yeah, you got to stand up. At some point, you have to stand up for yourself. And the first time I wrote a book, I didn't until almost the end. Till it almost drove me nuts. I'm like, if you don't back off now, I'm not going to finish this book. And then they actually listened to me. But do that. Like you said, after that, once you get into that flow, they're very reasonable. Because initially the book was supposed to be 26 chapters, and I changed chapters. Some of the chapters, I'm sorry guys, but some of them were like 100 pages long, which was twice as many as they typically allow for these chapters to be done. But I said it just needs to be like this, and we came to an agreement that there was allowed, and it was an exception, which became 4 or 5 exceptions throughout the book. But it just had to be one chapter. I couldn't split it up. And I imagine that there was a strain on you guys as well. But all of a sudden, here's 100 pages. Please be done by the end of the week.
Yeah, some of that was. I was like, yeah, they were such varying lengths. Some of them you would be like 15 pages, and then you get, But like you said, I think it was absolutely necessary, and and it all flowed together and pieced together as it was supposed to. But yeah, no, some of the and the good thing is, I think a lot of it is setting up the labs, right? So a lot of it is the lab steps and putting those pieces together where you absolutely need that content.
Did you guys actually follow along with most of the labs? Did you get a chance to do that?
To some extent, yeah. I've done some of that previously already. So setting up Security Onion and things like that.
So Fadi asked, go ahead. I would love you to Fadi asked if there's no second edition Hacking Exposed. I'll just answer that real quick and say McGraw-Hill does want to do a second edition. It's on the roadmap. We don't have a release yet because I haven't discussed it with him where we're going to start it. But there is a second edition of Hacking Exposed Industrial Control Systems on the roadmap.
It's about time.
Because I have so much time.
Anyway, you interrupted, Syed. What did you want to say?
Oh, no, I was saying that, yes, I also could not actually check all the steps. I'll be frank on that part. However, yes, from my experience, it looked, they were very much accurate, and, whatever I could check, in the command line and, the minimum device I have, I was able to actually, cross-verify them.
Yeah, I think for me, that's one of the things. That's the reason I brought in a team of publisher authors, because I didn't want to create the labs and have to do all that for some of the more technical things. I just didn't have the time. And when I was writing this book, my kids were just born and I had twins, micro preemies, and I didn't have time for all of this. And it was my family thought I was crazy, and I thought I was crazy, and I am crazy. But ultimately, I think that's the hardest part of writing a technical book is the labs, because you have to instruct people on how to get it set up. You have to make sure it's proper. You have to make sure what you're telling them is correct, and that all the commands are going to work and everything like that. That's harder than just writing a book, a lecture, right? I mean, that's so hard.
That's actually the reason that some of these chapters were out of sync. So because I was traveling the world around it, and little known fact is that I hit 6 continents while writing this book. So a little bit of content was written in 4 different continents. So just so you know, and I think I was in Singapore when I had to have my lab set up to do the next chapter. I just didn't have it together yet because I couldn't travel with all of that gear. So that's why some of these chapters were written out of sync.
Yeah, I did the same with mine in that some of my chapters written out of sync, but mainly mine was due to the fact that I was getting content from the other authors at different time frames, and publishers don't really like that. They want you to write it in order, and for you editors, right? I mean, it makes it hard when you're reading something and editing something. and then you're like, you're referencing something I haven't read yet.
I think it was actually Sayed who put a comment in his review saying, "Oh, now it makes sense." Because it's been so he had reviewed chapter 6 but it referenced stuff in chapter 3, and then when he
Exactly.
reviewed chapter 3, he's like, "Oh, now
Yeah.
it makes sense." Jeez.
Yeah, I was actually looking. Yeah, I was looking for those sentences. Like it was like half baked, but as I moved to the later chapters, yeah, it started making sense. Yeah, so I request everyone actually to read the full book. Like in the beginning, if someone feels like it's a bit dry, but definitely with time, they will start enjoying it.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to have real dry technical material, you really do need to have exercises and labs for them to
Mhm.
follow. Otherwise, it is just reading a bunch of technical stuff, and it gets boring. But the labs, and I think anybody that's reading that technical stuff and that wants that technical stuff, they want the labs. They want to be able to do it hands on.
If anything, I'd say go to the very last chapter, set up your lab, and then start reading the book,
Backwards, yeah.
right? So you can
Yeah,
follow along with it.
Mhm.
yeah.
So, from the technical editor's perspective, if there was anything that you could do different, throughout the process from becoming a technical editor. So, for those people that maybe want to start the journey by becoming a technical editor first, what advice would you give, or what would you do different?
I mean, for me, I would just say like just to actually almost try to have a dedicated time to do it. Right. If I knew these chapters were coming in, just say, hey, at Thursday, whatever my schedule worked. Right. So Thursday at 6:00, I'm going to dedicate 3 hours and make sure that I kind of have that penciled in just to do it. Right. And make sure that you go through it kind of in one shot. Right. So you get all the material and everything kind of in the same thing, where I'm not reading the chapter halfway through and then, 4 days later come back to it and try to kind of pick up where I left off. So that would kind of be my advice.
It's good advice.
Yeah. I would say, I'm maybe a slow reader compared to Ron. I allocated 6 to 8 hours per chapter. Sometime I went through twice. Now, when I was technical, I was a reviewer for study guide, like certified information system auditor study guide. That was quite easy because I know people are trying to gain knowledge, people are trying to pass this exam. But when I started reading Pascal's industrial cybersecurity, actually the job became tougher because here actually it's related to securing the critical infrastructure. It's not about passing an exam or it's not about gaining knowledge. It's about actually implementing them and ensuring that you're keeping the bad guys away from critical infrastructure, which can have a direct impact on the environment, on people's lives and all. So that's why I try to review. I mean, allocate more time. In the beginning, it was good. I got like 2 weeks per chapter, but with time, that became a little brutal, and actually gave me like 1 week and then 4 days. So I moved to later chapters, I had to allocate more time and actually be prepared when the chapters are coming. There was a time I remember I reviewed maybe 3 or 4 chapters in 2 weeks. So that was really difficult for me. Maybe some technical reviewers for some of them it's easier, but actually like I said I wanted to ensure that of course Pascal actually did 98 or 99% already. That there are enough material that can help stakeholders to secure the critical infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like thinking about that was a hard part for me too. I mean, Pascal did a great job of explaining it, and it's like, all right, well, what? Then to take a step back and after you've read it, to think about, okay, well, if I was doing this, what else am I missing, or is there things that I'm missing that could actually fit in the chapter? So, that kind of taking that time to think about those types of things either also, I think is important.
Exactly.
That was actually really useful because of my clientele and the customers I've had in my past and the experience I've had. I tend to write in a certain direction, and even after all that, I'm aimed at a certain industry, at a certain niche of the industry. And you guys help saying, hey, maybe you should broaden this up a little bit and talk more global or more high level about this instead of going into a specific area. So that really helped me just making it broader for a broader audience. So that was a fantastic help.
Now, to Philip's point, if someone would like to be a technical reviewer, the first thing is, of course, you need to allocate enough time. And the second thing is, choose a topic where you are very much interested in. Like when you're spending some time, you'll start enjoying those time. Like I'm interested in industrial control system or operational technology. Though I allocated 8 hours, per week, I enjoyed those time because I don't know 100%. Maybe I know 5%, 10%. So as I was reviewing Pascal's book, I started knowing new things. There are new things that I didn't know earlier. I started googling about them and actually started reading about them. So so yeah, it's not only actually reviewing something. You will end up gaining more knowledge as well. So definitely if you're interested about something, please start. Like Pascal said earlier, reach out to a PACT or other publishers, and propose them to be a technical reviewer.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into kind of the process of getting started. But before, there's a good comment here that is really in line with what we were just talking about, the writing style. What you just said, Pascal, about your writing style and who you're speaking to. And the comment was a question, do the publishers frown on adding colorful, humorous material to lighten the reading? And I can tell you from my perspective is McGraw-Hill was very open to me and my fellow authors writing kind of our style however we wanted to. And the way that my process worked was that all of my fellow authors submitted the material to me, and then I would kind of be the first level of, it was my job to make sure that everybody's presentation conformed to the overall flavor, the feeling of the book. So even though they provided the technical information for those chapters, I still wrote it with my own voice and my own words. I interpreted what they said with my own personality. And if you read my book, you'll see there are parts in there, especially like in the intro chapter, to where I speak conversationally. I write conversationally. So I had, I'm glad I was given the freedom to be able to write the way that I speak. And I used sarcasm. I'm a very sarcastic person. I'm a very blunt person. And so there are parts of my book where I called things out. And so I think most publishers will give you the latitude to put your own personality into your writing. I think it also goes to, number one, read the room, know your audience, right? So you keep your humor professional if it's a professional audience, right? I know that some publishers, I've heard rumors, I don't know Bill Pollack personally, but I know that the No Starch Press. I've spoken with Bill, who's the original, the founder, the owner, and editor for No Starch Press, and I know that he will go in, and it is what he told me. He goes in and he rewrites a lot of stuff and rewords a lot of stuff from his authors, and I personally don't like that because it's my knowledge. I'm the one speaking, or my authors. We're the ones telling the story, the content. We're in. It needs to come from us. So I don't personally want a publisher or an editor to rewrite things. I want my personality to come through in the way that I write. But some people may like that. They may feel more comfortable having things reworded to sound the way that the publisher wants. It just really depends. So I don't know. What did you get the gist of the latitude you were given, Pascal? I think PACT Publishing, I think they give you a lot of latitude.
Complete freedom. So what I told them up front is that I need you guys to do the editing and look for grammar, because like it or not, I'm not a native English speaker, so I make a mistake or two here and there. So do that. And with the first edition, that didn't go all too well because I had people reviewing and changing stuff that made it worse than better. But the second edition, that's a lot better. Yeah, but apart from that, if I wanted to make a joke, if I wanted to do a certain writing style, they had no issue with that. I didn't use any swear words, so I don't know if they would fall over that, but I expect them to take that out.
Yeah, I would
Beyond
say
that.
avoid that anyway,
Yeah.
but I mean, I use sarcasm and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about the the process of, and there's another good question is the publishers ask for a book translation from non-English readers and countries. So I didn't even know that
Same here.
like so for example, I'm just going to bring this up real quick because this was funny for me. Let me just bring this up and like,
Yeah, now that I'm hearing Pascal's voice, I'm replaying all those chapters as if he's reading them to me.
it's like more having Morgan Freeman. It's like
thank you, Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, it's like all right. So check this out.
Like Borat.
So going back to pancakes anyway. So so the publishers, going back to this question. So I didn't know this happened, right? So
Whoa.
My book was translated officially by McGraw-Hill in Chinese and published in Chinese.
Wow.
So
it doesn't even look like your book. I mean, you can't even tell.
Yeah. But where there's my name right there. I've only written one book that's been published right there. And I think publisher. So at first I thought the book was pirated and then republished in Chinese. And then I actually got a box as a courtesy copies of my book in Chinese. So I actually have these physical copies that was given, and it was from McGraw-Hill. So it was all done officially. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And me personally, I was like, holy shit, that's pretty cool. Like my book's been translated in Chinese and published in Chinese, like officially. So, so I guess the answer there is people will, some publishers will have it translated and published. I mean, since I don't speak Chinese, I wasn't given the opportunity to double check it, make sure it was translated properly. I have no idea if the book says what I said, but apparently it was translated in Chinese. So that was an interesting experience. So let's talk about
my first edition got translated in Korean and Chinese, for as far as I know, maybe even more languages. But yeah, they'll do that in the background and they won't tell you about it, and that's fine with me.
Yeah, and that's the advantage of having a publisher, right? Is they take care of they take care of all the visuals and all that. They also take care of the indexing in the back of the book and stuff like that. So there's a lot of benefits to that. So let's talk a little bit about the process. And if you're a first-time author, sometimes it's really hard to get published through certain publishers. So, for example, and I'm an exception because of my circumstance that happened. I'll talk a little bit about that. But McGraw-Hill, Wiley, and some others, the really well-known publications, maybe Singris, they want either really established authors, experienced authors, or someone who has a big name in their industry. Whereas there are some publishing companies like Pact, No Starch,
PBP,
and maybe CRC. They will accept first-time authors. Pact is probably the best way to go if you don't want to self-publish and you want to get published. It's really easy to get accepted through Pact because they have such a huge list of topics they want published and all that. So that's a good way to go. You can actually approach them if you
have a really good idea and you're very passionate about something and you present that to Pact, there's probably a 90% chance they say, yeah, let's go do it.
Yeah. But I think that a lot of times you're going to get approached if your LinkedIn profile is really filled out and you're very active and you communicate a lot, and you have especially if you have a lot of followers. I think that's the big thing is like they'll approach you because like, oh, you have a lunch. I mean, that's one of the key things I think I found is that they want people who have a lot of followers and who are very active, and you seem to be an expert in your field, and they'll contact you. However, and just a quick aside on how I got approached. So I got lucky, number one, writing for probably one of the most prolific Hacking Exposed, the book series has been around since the 90s. It's one of the most prolific cybersecurity book series in the world throughout the history of cybersecurity. And I fell into it by accident. Long story short is Joel Scambray, who is one of the 3 original authors from the original Hacking Exposed. I actually interviewed with him for a job and did not get the job. It was actually the wrong job for my skill set. But I had on my resume that I had a manuscript, which is a key point. Remember that. I had already started writing a manuscript, and I put it on my resume, unfinished book on my resume. And he saw it, and he goes, I think the time might be right to do an expose on cybersecurity or ICS and control system cybersecurity. And he asked if I'd be interested. And I said, yeah. And so he hooked me up with McGraw-Hill, made the recommendation, submitted a proposal, and it was like accepted like that because it came as a direct referral from Joel Scambray, one of the 3 godfathers of cybersecurity publications. And so I got lucky in that aspect. Most people aren't going to fall into that circumstance. So the ways that you can approach, so we already talked about Packed Press. You can probably approach them, be active on LinkedIn, get your followers and your connections up. But also, if you're a first-time author, the number one thing that I would recommend for not only the chance of getting accepted by more publishers, but also for your own sanity is write your manuscript first, or at least write most of your manuscript first. Get a bunch of it already written, because number one, you're on your own time frame. There's no stress. You're writing, you can do it at your leisure. And then when you get it to a point to where you feel like this is pretty good, start approaching publishers with your proposal. And every publisher's website has a submission process to where you could submit a proposal, a book outline, or an entire manuscript, or a partially completed manuscript. You have a better chance of getting published with major publishers as a first-time author if you have a significant portion, if not all, of your manuscript already done, because that guarantees them, or almost guarantees them, success. What makes publishers nervous is whenever there's an unknown author, you don't have a precedent of success, because they're going to give you an advance, and there's a risk of them losing money. They put significant resources into a book. Whenever a book, even before the book gets published or even announced or even advertised, they've already got an ISBN number for it. They've already got a team of people dedicating resources, the marketing, the sales, everything. They're starting to pre-sell that book even before it's even starting to be contracted and written. So there's a risk to them. So if you approach them with a significant portion of your manuscript already written, you got a pretty good chance of success, and you've already saved your sanity for the most part. So any comments on that, guys?
I do. I'm going to wait for my 2 editors, because if I'm going to do a 3rd book, and I don't think, because I'm really fed up with it. If I'm going to do a 3rd book, I'm going to write it up front before I go to the hassle of dealing with the publishers. I'm just curious. The 2 editors, are you guys interested in writing books, or is it just, what, I've seen it now, there's still a lot of work.
Screw that.
Any comments?
I'll go first. To be frank, I don't think I'll be able, looking at my schedule or calendar. Right. I don't think I'll be starting writing a book before mid 2022, or maybe starting of 2023. But I'm enjoying reading the book. I'm reading 2 more books probably. Starting from now till end of 2022. So that's what I'll be doing. Yeah, definitely if my calendar permits, I would like to, but I have seen how Pascal actually wrote the book. It's very much time consuming, and it will really make your calendar super busy. Definitely, it's always great to share knowledge with people, as long as the calendar permits. We have time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to eventually. I've not nearly as time consuming, but I teach a couple classes, and I've had to build some content that way, and even building labs and things like that. Just seeing how much time it is to do that. So yeah, I mean, definitely the time and the topic, I think, right, is got to be relevant as well. But yeah, I think probably down the line. I mean, I enjoy teaching, and it's interesting with teaching. I guess it's a little bit different because you get that instant feedback, right? When you start to build out the labs and build out the lectures and what you're discussing, you could tell right away if if people's eyes are glazing over or if they're getting it.
Yeah, that was the biggest fear I had when publishing my book was like when it first released. It's like, am I going to get a bunch of shitty reviews? Am I going to get a bunch of if it's not going to sell, it's going to be a flop. That's the other thing too. Whether you're doing videos or books or whatever, don't read the comments. I had a couple negative comments from, I think one was actually somebody who was like a competitor or jealous or something like that. It was an unreasonable, it was an unreasonable, shitty comment. Didn't even use a real name or anything like that. And they kind of thrashed it. And I was like, dude, like I even, like all the things you complained about, I even said in the introduction of the book, this is not what this book is. And, but other than that, I mean, it's gotten good reviews. And so, but don't read the comments. Don't take it too seriously. But I think that going back to like writing a book, another way to get started with that manuscript is to start writing a series of blogs or white papers. And then you put all those together into a manuscript. And I think that's an easy way to start too. So that's just my 2 cents there.
Yeah, to build upon that, I actually used 2 or maybe 3 of the articles I wrote for ThreatGen. I use them as guidelines in some of my chapters. The one on Shodan research came from a blog post, and then the architecture matters. I turned that into like chapter 2 or 3 about industrial architectures. Yeah, that helped as well. And that's really quick on to comment on both of you guys when you said time consuming. Hell yeah. So basically, I put my family on hold for a year because every night, every weekend, every waking free moment you have, you're writing this book. You're setting up labs. You're redoing it. I had the fortune of right in the middle, they switched from Security Onion 16 to Security Onion 2.3. So I had to go back and rewrite like 4 or 5 chapters. So it was very, very time consuming. Of course,
and
I ended up with twice as many pages as I contracted for as well. So that probably didn't help the time frame either. But yeah, it is what it is. It's out now.
Well, let's it's coming down to the last few minutes here, so let's go ahead and give our readers the juice, which is so you can get a 20% discount by purchasing on at Pact, right? That's the discount code. It's at Pact.
Yes.
Purchasing from Pact, not on Amazon, on Pact, discount code cybersecurity with a capital C, cybersecurity 21, and the @ symbol. Apparently that @ symbol is necessary. I don't know if it works without it, but we verified it works with it. So you get a 20% discount on, I don't know if it's all books or just Pascal's book, but it says 20% off on ebooks.
I try it on any book. If you're going out and buying a book,
yeah, try it. But that's the ebooks, and that's valid through the 18th of December.
Yep.
So there's your discount code right there. So based on that, guys, thanks for joining us to talk about the release of Pascal's book and your participation in that, and kind of giving our viewers some tips and just kind of letting them know about what you went through and the process and the trials and tribulations and some tips and tricks. Hopefully this was useful to everybody, and I appreciate you being on. And thanks, Pascal, for writing the second book and going through that. And I really appreciate you making it twice as long, because I saw it and I was like, holy crap, that's amazing. and
I'm going to be known as the guy with the paperweight book.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thickest ICS cybersecurity book that has come out to date. In fact, I think Hacking Exposed 7, the most recent version of Hacking Exposed, wasn't even that big. I mean, I think that the thickest book that I've seen in cybersecurity before this one, I believe, was Ron, how many pages is that? The thickest book that I've seen, malware was Malware Analysis Cookbook, I think, or one of the malware analysis books. That was a thick book.
780.
Yeah, you beat it by
you beat
like
it. You beat
pages.
Hacking Exposed 7, which is the thickest.
There you go.
book.
Up yours, Joel.
Yeah, the malware cookbook and Hacking Exposed 7 were the two thickest ones. Those are the two thickest ones I've seen before your book. So outstanding. Anyway, so guys, thanks for being on the show. Pascal, thanks again.
On a personal note, guys, thanks for making this book a possibility. You guys were tremendous help, and I hope our paths cross again at some point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both.
And like I said, I'd like to get you both. I think we didn't really get a chance to talk about your background more thoroughly, or kind of the expertise you have. But talking backstage,
open invitation.
Yeah, talking backstage, I think that you both have some qualifications that I think would make for some interesting conversation on the show. So I'm going to reach out to you personally to see if you want to come on the show in the future. I think that there's some good stuff there. So again, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks to our viewers, and we will see you next time. Take care.